Hi. My name is Jude Raphael. I grew up in a quiet town where everybody knew each other, and church was as much a part of life as breakfast. My family and I went to Mass every Sunday, and I spent my childhood believing that faith was as natural as breathing. But somewhere along the way, things started to change. As I grew older, I began to notice I was different. It wasn't a revelation, just a subtle feeling that grew over time. My friends would talk about their crushes, point out girls at school, and I'd nod along, pretending to feel the same excitement. Inside, though, I was scared, wondering why I wasn't like them. In high school, my questions turned to defiance. I pulled away from my faith, convinced it had nothing to offer someone like me. I explored new ideas, surrounded myself with people who accepted me, and gradually, I let go of the person I used to be. I stopped going to church and instead embraced a life where I felt free to be myself. I told myself this was the path to happiness. Years later, after moving to Burlington, Vermont, I found myself working as a graphic designer for a local advertising agency. Life was good, and I felt comfortable in my skin for the first time in my life. I had friends, a career I loved, and I no longer felt conflicted about who I was. We met at an art show. He was quiet, thoughtful, and understood me in a way no one else had before. Before long, we were inseparable. Marcus and I moved in together into a cozy, two-story house near Lake Champlain. On weekends, we'd walk down to the lake, coffee in hand, watching the water ripple under the morning sun. There was something peaceful about our life together, something I believed was true happiness. For the first time, I had someone who accepted me fully, no questions asked. My career took off too. I'd become the lead designer on several big projects, and our agency was gaining a solid reputation. Marcus was proud of me, and I loved that I had someone who celebrated my achievements. Our lives were filled with laughter, late-night conversations, and the comfort of knowing we were building something real together. I thought I'd finally found everything I'd ever wanted. It was a crisp autumn morning. I'd just hung up after a quick call with Marcus. We were planning our weekend, a trip out to the mountains, maybe, or a quiet day in with a good movie. I couldn't wait. Then, out of nowhere, a massive shape appeared on the road, a moose. I'd heard about moose accidents on these roads, but I never expected to see one blocking my path, its dark eyes staring straight at me. My heart pounded as I gripped the wheel, instinctively swerving to avoid it. The car jolted as I veered off course, and for a split second, I thought I might regain control. But at that speed, there was no stopping the momentum. Everything slowed down. My coffee cup flew from my hand, its warm contents splattering across the dashboard, almost in slow motion. The car skidded, tires screaming against the road as I felt the pull of gravity. The darkness didn't last. Somewhere, I became aware of myself again. But I wasn't in my body, I was separate, an observer. I could sense the urgency around me, the sounds of voices shouting, the screech of metal being torn apart, but they felt far away, like echoes reaching me from another world. It was then that I realized I was outside my own body, no longer trapped in the wreckage. The realization brought an eerie calm with it, as if I'd left all the fear and pain behind. My body felt like a shell I'd shed, lying helpless beneath me, while I was somewhere else. Then I saw the helicopter, blades whirring violently, hovering in a clearing, and I recognized the paramedics below. They were working on me, my lifeless body, and there was a strange detachment in watching them. I could see them fighting to keep me alive, the machines, the intense looks on their faces as they performed their work. But somehow that body no longer felt like me. It was as if I were watching someone else, some stranger caught in a battle for life. I felt suspended, floating high above, aware of everything around me but feeling strangely peaceful, as if I were being held by something beyond comprehension. Then, in an instant, everything shifted. I felt a force, an overwhelming pull that seemed to tug at every part of my being. Suddenly, I was hurtling through a vortex, a spiraling tunnel of color and sound, unlike anything I'd ever seen or heard. It was terrifying and exhilarating, and I felt the full force of it as if I were being drawn somewhere that held answers beyond my comprehension. As I moved through the vortex, I felt a heaviness settle over me, a sense of everything I'd ever done, every choice, every action. The force of it pressed down on me, and yet I couldn't turn away. I sensed that I was heading towards something unavoidable, something that would demand an honesty I hadn't faced in years. In that swirling darkness, fragments of my life came into view, vivid and undeniable. Each moment unfolded before me, not just as memories, but as if I were reliving them, feeling the weight of every decision. I saw my life through new eyes, my choices laid bare without excuses, every lie I'd told, every person I'd hurt. I felt the consequences of my actions as if they were etched onto my very soul. In that place of swirling colors and echoing sounds, I felt a presence beside me, a familiar presence. Somehow, I knew it was Marcus. There he was, as real as any memory, but different. It was as if I were seeing him through a new lens, without the haze of everyday emotions and attachments. I felt a wave of sadness mixed with love, realizing that everything I'd ever done with or to him was laid out, open and raw, unable to hide from the truth that seemed to surround us. In that moment, I began to see our relationship differently. It was more than the good memories we'd created, the love I had felt, the comfort of his companionship. I saw layers I'd never noticed before, ways in which our love, while honest, had also caused harm. Every intimate moment seemed marked with shadows I couldn't fully explain, as if each choice we'd made together had left a trace that couldn't be erased. I was forced to confront the reality that the love I had defined so freely had consequences beyond what I could see, affecting not only myself but Marcus, too, in ways that reached deep into our souls. The scene shifted, and I felt another presence, a presence unlike any other. Words can't capture the feeling of it, but I knew with absolute certainty that it was Jesus. There was a deep, unmistakable recognition, an awareness so strong that I felt it resonate through every part of me. It wasn't like any image I'd grown up with, this was real, raw, and overpowering. His presence was filled with love, but also a sense of authority that demanded my complete attention. He didn't speak in words, yet I felt a message flowing into me, clearer than any conversation. It was a message of love, an all-encompassing, overwhelming love that reached beyond anything I'd ever known. But it wasn't the kind of love that simply accepted everything as it was. It was a love that also held truth, a truth that revealed where I'd gone astray, where I'd justified my choices in ways that ignored a deeper design and purpose. I felt both the embrace of that love and the piercing clarity of that truth, as if I were seeing myself for the first time without any illusions. Then, with a sense of gravity I couldn't escape, I was shown the impact of my choices, stripped of excuses and rationalizations. Each decision I'd made was laid bare, and I felt their weight pressing into me. Jesus showed me the truth behind the life I had lived, the people I'd influenced, and the moments I had justified my actions. He didn't condemn, but there was an undeniable reality in his gaze, as if he could see into every corner of my soul. I realized then that the choices I had made were more than just personal decisions, they had altered the lives of those around me, shaping paths and possibilities in ways I had never understood. In that place of pure understanding, I was shown the depth and meaning behind our choices regarding sexuality. It was unlike any perspective I had ever known, as if the very design of human relationships was unveiled before me. I saw how the union between man and woman carried an essence that was both spiritual and eternal, mirroring a divine relationship I had never before comprehended. This wasn't about rules or restrictions, it was about a sacred design woven deeply into creation itself. Sexuality wasn't just physical, it was tied to the soul, each choice creating a ripple that extended far beyond the moment. As I watched, I began to understand the impact of acting on same-sex orientation in a way I had never considered. I was shown that, while our attractions and desires are real and complex, it is how we respond to them that shapes our souls. Every choice I'd made in my relationships left an imprint, marking my soul in ways that weren't always visible but carried lasting spiritual weight. It was as if each moment of intimacy, though sincere, had somehow pulled me further from a truth I hadn't wanted to face, binding me in ways I hadn't anticipated. Then, I was given a vision of the impact that LGBTQ+ activism had on the world. I saw how each act of advocacy, each word spoken in favor of this identity as an ultimate truth, created waves that affected countless lives. It wasn't just about individual choices, it was a cultural shift that influenced how people perceived their identities, often pulling them further from this design I was now beginning to understand. I could see the joy and pride in these movements, but also a sense of hidden struggle, as if beneath the surface, many felt an unspoken weight that they couldn't quite explain. The activism had become not just a message of acceptance, but a reinforcement of an identity that created barriers to deeper spiritual truths. I was taken to a realm I could only describe as a place between worlds, a state of limbo where countless souls seemed trapped. These souls were not in torment, but they weren't at peace either. It felt like they were caught in their own justifications, unable to accept the truths they had turned away from during their lives. I saw people who had clung to their identities, their choices, without ever considering that there might be another way. They were suspended, awaiting something, but unable to move forward. I felt an overwhelming sadness as I realized that many of these souls had held beliefs they thought were true but were now caught between worlds, unable to reconcile their choices with a reality they hadn't fully accepted. Then, I was given a terrifying glimpse into hell, a place of absolute separation from love, light, and hope. It was not fire and brimstone, but a darkness and loneliness that pierced deeper than I could imagine. In this place, souls were left to confront the full weight of their choices, separated entirely from the presence of God. It was a realm where regret seemed to echo endlessly, a silence more agonizing than any sound. I saw people isolated in their own worlds, unable to escape the consequences of their lives, each choice playing back in endless loops of realization. It wasn't punishment in the way I'd imagined, it was the natural result of a life turned inward, cut off from the divine. In a revelation that seemed to go beyond words, I was shown the intricate design that God created for human sexuality and gender. I could see how the union of man and woman was more than just a biological relationship, it was a powerful, sacred bond with divine significance. This union reflected God's relationship with humanity, a harmony that bridged the physical and spiritual. Gender was shown not as a limitation but as an essential element in a larger, beautiful design that honored each person's unique role and purpose. I felt humbled by the wisdom embedded in this plan, a purpose that I had never fully understood before. I was then shown how deeply rooted spiritual truths were embedded within the male and female union. This was not about laws or rigid roles but about a connection that echoed divine unity, a harmony that couldn't be replicated in any other way. The union of male and female was like two complementary forces that, when brought together, created a completeness, a reflection of God's relationship with us. I saw that this bond was a form of worship, a living testament to the Creator's love. Through this vision, I understood that this sacred union was a gift meant to draw us closer to God's truth, fulfilling us in ways I hadn't previously comprehended. I was brought face to face with the impact of my own activism within the LGBTQ+ community. My years spent promoting acceptance, defending my identity, and encouraging others to do the same now appeared before me in a new light. I could see that my intentions had always been to spread love and understanding, but the weight of those actions took on a new meaning. I realized that each post, every conversation, and each stand I had taken had influenced others, sometimes leading them further from truths they were silently wrestling with. My activism had been sincere, but now I felt the gravity of it, seeing how my voice had impacted others in ways I hadn't considered. The setting around me shifted, and I found myself standing in what felt like a grand courtroom, a place of quiet authority and purpose. But instead of judgment, I was offered a choice. It was a moment of profound clarity where all distractions faded, and I felt fully seen, fully known. I could either accept this path of transformation or remain as I had been. I understood that no one would force me, the decision was mine alone. This courtroom wasn't a place of condemnation but rather an opportunity for alignment with truth, a moment to choose freely. The first moments of consciousness after my experience were strange and intense. The sterile light of the hospital room felt harsh, almost too real after the vivid and surreal journey I'd been on. I was back in my body, but it felt different, heavy, as though I carried the weight of everything I'd learned within me. Memories of the visions were fresh, yet felt oddly distant, like an imprint I couldn't shake. I now saw life, relationships, and even my own decisions from a completely transformed perspective. Every sound and movement around me held a new significance, reminding me of the purpose I had chosen to return to fulfill. Word of my experience spread quickly, both through Marcus and the friends we shared. Many reacted with confusion, and some dismissed it as a symptom of the trauma I'd endured. Friends who had known me for years were unsure how to respond, questioning my newfound beliefs and doubting the authenticity of my story. Their disbelief was painful but not surprising. I had been warned about this response during my visions, yet facing it in reality was harder than I had imagined. The loss of trust from people who once saw me as a steadfast ally hurt deeply, yet it solidified my commitment to the truth I had witnessed. The skepticism and even anger from friends only reinforced my resolve to live according to the purpose I now felt so profoundly. Thank you for staying to the end of this experience. Save a soul by sharing this video with your friends and families, so that they will be saved from the path of hell. Subscribe to our channel if you have not, to remain updated whenever we share another experience that is being sent to us. Thank you.